Well, Paul, I think everything you need to know is found in the last couple of paragraphs of the summary. I mean, because basically what Ole Miss is saying is that, first of all, because an institutional control charge was not included in the 2016 notice based upon similar facts, it appears the charge rests on the increased number of allegations, which should not be the committee's focus. In other words, they're saying that, look, you didn't hit us with lack of institutional control until you got these other allegations. And it's basically the same kind of facts, and so you should never have put a lack of institutional control on us. That's number one. Number two is something that you and Dr. Redpath talked about, is that Ole Miss is claiming at the bottom of its summary that Hugh Freeze, they had the systems in place to prevent this. You had a head coach who is monitoring the program, and we can't, you can't blame us because people stepped off the reservation and broke the rules. And to me, those two sentences, Paul, summarize what Ole Miss is saying today.
That's what they are saying, Tony. You've watched NCAA cases for a very long and distinguished career. What's your best guess on what the NCAA will say?
Well, the NCAA depends on what they've got. There's always a meeting head-to-head, or even before the infractions committee meeting, when they sort of let everybody know what they've got. And it's really like a negotiation for a settlement in a trial. You walk into the room and, well, I didn't do this. Well, yeah, you did. Or I didn't do this. Well, we can't prove it. We'll agree with your response on these 3 things, but on these 7 things, we got you dead to rights. And so it ultimately comes down to what the NCAA can prove. And the question that I have is, does this thing get resolved before the infractions committee, or is Ole Miss? It sounds to me like they're doubling down and they're going to take it to its logical conclusion.
Now, Tony, some are surprised they have stuck with Hugh Freeze, but realistically, is this unusual to be with a coach because they have been together with him all along? It's worth remembering Ross Bjork has had many laudatory comments. He sat with me and others in Destin last year, about 53 weeks ago, and really pretty much said, I'm with this man all the way.
Yeah, man, I think it's been that way all along. No, this doesn't surprise me at all. I think they are making the claim that while mistakes were made, the head coach was doing what he was supposed to do. And he may have made some mistakes, but it wasn't a question of committing violations knowingly, all right? And so I've always gotten the impression that Ole Miss is going to stick with Hugh Freeze through the end of this thing. Now, I've also done this long enough to know that you get that impression, and then when it gets right down to crunch time, you come out with a different result. But my belief is that they're sticking with it, and they say, you know what, this is our guy. This is our guy. He has taken us places where we hadn't been, and we don't think he violated the rules, or certainly didn't knowingly violated the rules, and we're going to stick behind him.
Tony, if we get down to a committee hearing and these charges remain, what happens next?
Well, then Ole Miss will have a decision to make. Do they go? It's like, do you go to the jury? All right, you're trying to broker a deal, and you finally make up your mind. If you're the defendant, you say, nope, I'm going to put it in the hands of the jury. Then we'll see what happens. But again, it depends on what the NCAA has.
Now, let me ask you this, Tony. I mean, if the NCAA is going, you know what? Listen, we don't agree. We're and these conversations do go on. I mean, we're talking about very high levels. It may not be formally, but it's certainly at worst informally. And Ole Miss gets word theoretically that we don't buy your arguments. We're sorry. Good lawyering there, but these charges will remain. So let's go to the jury. I mean, is there what does Ole Miss have left in its poker chips?
Then Ole Miss, if the NCAA shuts them down and says we don't believe any of your arguments, or we've got you dead to rights on these 8 or 9 arguments, then Ole Miss has to make a decision. We're going to let it go to the jury. We're going to take the penalty we get, or we have to mitigate the circumstances either through more self-imposed penalties or making personnel changes. Do we disassociate from boosters? What do we do? But that's the only card that that Ole Miss has left to play if the NCAA says we don't believe any of your arguments and we have the proof to back it up.
Tony, finally, how big of a chip? And I hate to talk about him this way because I have great admiration for Coach Freeze, but how big of a chip is he in this poker game if they don't buy the arguments?
Regardless of who the head coach is, Hugh Freeze or anybody else, the ultimate chip is the head coach for the institution. The institution has to make so look, we have stuck with our head coach as long as we can stick with him, but for the good of the institution, for the good of the program, good of our the best for our university is to make this decision. So we'll see. I will say this: after talking, I was in a group that talked to Hugh Freeze last week when he sounded like he had things under control and he was ready to manage this team through the choppy waters coming up. He sounded. I thought he was calm. I really was. I was impressed with the way that he spoke when he spoke to the media.